I would now like to hand over the stage to Abhishek Bansal, Vice President and Chief Revenue Officer at OYO, who has led this entire program with his team. He will talk to us about how OYO is using data science to transform the hospitality industry and is providing immense value to all its stakeholders. Over to you, Abhishek.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Karen. Hope I'm audible. Yeah, great.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Karen, and thanks a lot, Rohit, for the kind introduction. I would firstly like to thank everyone on the call, especially the honorable dignitaries, for allowing us this opportunity. In the next 15 minutes, I would like to take you all through how a traditional industry like hospitality is leveraging new age skills like data science to deliver value across stakeholders. More specifically, talk about how OYO is spearheading this change while delivering great consumer experience and while delivering maximum RevPAR to our hotel partners. With that context, I'll just deep dive into the content. So, as I was saying earlier, right? So the OYO is essentially leading the hospitality industry to leverage data science and technology to deliver value to its hotel partners and consumers, right? So those are the two pillars of our ecosystem, and we at OYO we leverage data science to deliver value across the life cycle on both the sides. So on the right hand side of the slide, you'll see that for the entire consumer life cycle, right from customer acquisition to the booking experience that the consumer sees, to the content that the consumer engages with, to dynamic pricing, which is of course a key part of the hospitality industry, and then how to maximize the inventory yield on the post-booking process, and again to the value of from across the life cycle to hotel partners, starting from network planning to real-time performance insights to how do they maximize their RevPAR. And just for everyone's this thing, that RevPAR is a very commonly used term in the hospitality industry. It just means revenue per available room, essentially an indication of the productivity that every room gives, or the revenue that every room gives, right? In terms of partners giving local last mile inputs and working capital management. So all of this to deliver great customer experience and to deliver maximum value to our partners. Given the paucity of time today, I'll probably, and to make it more real, I'll focus primarily on how data science is deeply embedded into the entire consumer life cycle, which I was explaining earlier, and how that enables us to deliver maximum RevPAR to our small and medium business partners, which are primarily our hotel partners, right? From in customer acquisition, how does segmentation help us in defining the right consumer personas, and how do we do targeted communications basis that? In the booking experience, how does everything on our product, right from say homepage to recommendations to the ranking model to prices, all of those are personalized. Then how do we after that leverage data science into the content that the consumers engage with, right, starting from images to textual content, then dumping straight into the dynamic pricing aspect to talk about how do we do centralized pricing, which is very intense involved on data. And lastly, once the consumer has made the booking, then how do different models like cancellation prediction model, overbooking, GeoChat, etc. come into play that help us maximize the. In the subsequent section of the slide, I'll just try to take you through very broad examples to walk through each of these points. Firstly, jumping into the customer acquisition bit. So as I was saying, right, so we use segmentation, which helps us design consumer cohorts, and then using that consumer cohorts to create specific communication that resonates with those consumer cohorts. On this slide, you will see an example of the different axes which are used to define the consumer segmentation, which vary from say life cycle and quality of user, their pattern of usage, their choice of hotel, which is more around their brand affinity, their price affinity, and their payment affinity. right? So someone may use a credit card, someone may use a debit card, someone may be using a wallet, someone may like PA, someone may like prepaid, etc. And on the communication side / engagement, which is that some consumers may prefer engaging on CRM, some on WhatsApp, some on SMS, etc., etc. So what we do is we look at all of these axes to define like consumer cohorts. There below are just some examples of how these cohorts are defined. This is the recency and frequency, but largely all of this helps us define segments. And then, this is an example where you see that basis the segmentation and basis the use case. You are able to send customized CRM to different consumer cohorts, and that actually helps us drive 40 to 50% higher CTRs. CTRs is click-through rates, which is when you send a communication, how many people actually click on it. So we have seen in our experiments that just by segmenting and personalizing the communications, we are able to drive 40 to 50% higher CTRs and hence deliver higher value. Moving on quickly to how the entire booking experience post the customer acquisition is personalized. So here on our slide, you will see that the homepage of our platform, right, that the entire homepage is actually customized through graph-based machine learning algorithms. And the recommendation engine that runs on the homepage is actually drives about 15% of the demand to our hotel partners. I mean, it's that's the kind of impact that has. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you will see that there are specific recommended OYOs for the consumer. In the middle of the slide, you will see that there are customized offers and deals. In this case, the consumer, in our internal algorithm, we see that the consumer has a particular discount affinity and is a new user. So we kind of offer, exciting offers. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see that the search actually traces at what was your past search like and allows you to continue on that search so that you have a great booking experience. Moving going a step further into the personalization story, once the consumer is on the app and tries to search and search for a particular location and book a hotel, at that point of time also the entire sort or the entire ranking of hotels is personalized based on 30 plus input parameters, and that helps drive 5% higher conversion. When I say higher conversion, I mean that number of people landing on the platform to the number of people creating a booking. So in this particular snapshot also, you will see that for the same search Gurgaon and for the same check-in dates, which is 25th December, 25 December, 26 December, different users are actually seeing different properties in their ranking orders, right? So in first example, there is a user with affinity for low price bookings. Second case is a consumer with a premium set and the consumer sees a capital or with a higher ARR bookings. And third case is a new user and they're trying to sell a more premium property in that location to that new user. A step further, right? So once the consumer has selected a property, even after that, what kind of price do you show to the customer is also personalized, right? So we show personalized prices based on user persona, and that helps us drive further 10 to 15% jump in conversion. Again, this is an example. On this slide, you will see that for the same property and for the same check-in dates, different users see different prices. Right on the left-hand side of the slide is a new user seeing a price of INR 399, while a non-member sees a price of 1095. A member with a high willingness to pay gets a membership discount, but then has a price of 1064. And then a member with a low willingness to pay sees a price as low as 1034. So, depending on your the consumer's willingness to pay and other traits, internal traits that we have regarding the consumer, even the prices are personalized. So basically, what we saw in this section is that the entire journey, right, from home page to sort to prices, everything is actually personalized, and that helps drive much higher conversion and helps bring much more value to our consumers as well as hotel partners. Continuing that onto the content piece, so we have an in-house automated image scoring model, where the model basically rates every image in a very automated fashion on 4 parameters. I'm not going to the details. This is these parameters. Algorithm gives a score for images which qualify a certain score go live on our app. For the images which don't, they are sent back into the loop, and then the reshoot happens. And when they're sent back into the loop, they are sent back with exact feedback on what really needs to improve for that particular image. To show how this plays out in real life, so you will see that there are two images, left side, right hand side. The algorithm itself scores the left hand side image much higher than the right hand side image, because the right hand side image lacks in basic color composition, natural light, and tone. Right? And so this happens without any human intervention, and is a great tool. Taking it a step further, how this helps is that because now we have, say, codified what lies in an image in a very digitized manner, and we know how the consumer is engaging with our different content, we are able to do automated image sequencing and hero pick selection. Hero pick is the front pick that you see when you look at a hotel, to drive 6% higher conversion and 11% higher click-through rates for our partners. Again, on this example, you will see that left-hand side and right-hand side are two photos of the same hotel. So the algo basically tries to optimize as to which photo brings in the maximum conversion for the hotel. And the content personalization doesn't really end only at images. It also flows into the other textual context parts, so which helps drive further 2 to 3% lift in conversion. So on this slide, you'll see at the bottom in the red, there are two taglines highlighted, right? And for the same hotel too, there are two different taglines which are being shown to consumers to see how does conversion get impacted. This was, how content is a very key part in the hospitality industry, and that is just the description of how we leverage data science and content to deliver value. Moving on to pricing quickly, right? So we at Oyo, we enable dynamic pricing for our hotel partners, and that delivers 20% higher RevPAR. These are just some indicative, trends from the last 9 months, where you can see that for hotels which have given us pricing control, have see a much higher RevPAR number. This is just to give you an example of how this works. On the left-hand side of the graph, you will see that the blue line essentially is the actual occupancy line, and the red line is the pricing line, and the yellow line is the trend line. So in the graph on the top, you will see that given that initially the occupancy was high, right here, given the high occupancy, the prices actually keep increasing on a day-to-day basis, and towards the end, the prices increase more to extract more ARR. While in a trend where there is occupancy is low, the prices towards the D-Day start liquidating to make sure that the property gets enough business, and all of this happens in a very highly automated fashion, right? And just to give you context, there are about 50 million plus pricing iterations which happen on a daily basis to make sure that every property gets the right pricing at every point of time. And while we do dynamic pricing, we also enable our partners to give localized inputs to drive the last 8 to 10% efficiencies. And this happens in a very tech and product-driven manner via Tariff Manager. In this example, you can see that the partner sees a particular price on the left-hand side. The partner sees the same price on the Oyo app, and the partner has the option to change that price in a certain defined limit. And then the partner gives the pricing change input, and the price gets reflected on the app. What this enables is to make sure that the partner is also participating, and just in case there are any localized events, localized peaks, or any local intelligence the partner has, the partner is able to transfer that to us in a very technology and product driven manner. Last but not the least is the process which comes in the end, like where the consumer is almost close. The consumer has experienced the home page, the listing page. The consumer has witnessed the pricing, and now the consumer is about to book. And so during that journey, and then after booking journey, is where the entire yield maximization kicks in. So when the user is booking on the app, this is the consumer behavior. We have an assessment of if the probability of cancellation is high or low, and that's a dynamic cancellation model that runs. Post that, once the booking is created, there is a after booking process which runs, which automatically calls customers to see if to check if they're coming or not, and releases inventory so that there is no inventory that goes waste. On top of that, there is a overbooking logic, which is again a different model which runs to make sure that like if there are more rooms which can be booked, then we take that booking in a very calculated risk manner. So again, to show how this operates in real life. So on this slide, you will see that the dynamic cancellation model helps customize flow basis cancellation probability, and that helps us drive 5% higher yield. So you will see two different snapshots of the same hotel, where one consumer is seeing a book now and pay at hotel option, while the other consumer is seeing a pay now option or a prepaid option, right? And these are just some schematics of how the after booking process works, where guest creates a booking, gets an automated message. If the consumer is non-contactable, the consumer says I'm not coming, and the inventory gets released. And similarly on overbooking. By booked occupancy, algo sees that probably the chance of one getting freed up, so the algo opens up inventory and allows one extra booking to come so that inventory yield is maximized. And so the last slide, which is that after the consumer has made the booking, in case of any queries, the resolution is actually supported by an AI-based chatbot, which we internally call as Yo, and that leads to a quicker customer service and great experience. Some real-life examples of how that plays out in an automated manner. So, given the time we had, I think this was a very brief overview of how data science touches each and every aspect of the journey and how it helps maximize value to both consumers and partners in each and every step. If there are any questions after this, we'll, as a team, take it offline and make sure that we get back to you. But yeah, that's all from my side. And back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Abhishek. We really appreciate all the hard work you put in every day, especially for the Data Science Academy. It is my honor to welcome Debjani Ghosh, President NASSCOM, for a special address. But before she begins, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce her. Debjani is the president of the National Association of Software and Services Companies, which we all know as NASSCOM, since April 2018. She's a veteran in the technology industry and the first woman at the helm of this association in its 3-decade history. She was instrumental in developing Think Digital Think India strategy, aimed at establishing India as a hub for digital talent and innovation. In January 2018, she was felicitated by the President of India under the First Ladies Program, and recently was honored by Vogue as the Tech Leader of the Year 2020, and has also been listed among India's most powerful women in tech by Business Today. Debjani holds a bachelor's degree in political science and an MBA degree in marketing from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research in Mumbai. Debjani was the first woman to lead Intel India. On behalf of all of us present here, welcome Debjani. Thank you for making it today. We know that you've moved a board meeting to accommodate this, and we are very grateful that you could be here.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, Rohit. And thank you, Siddharth, for giving me this opportunity, this fabulous opportunity to speak to the cohort, the first cohort of data analysts and scientists at OYO. And Rohit, as I already said before, kudos to you and to the entire OYO team for coming up with this brilliant idea. I mean, while everyone is figuring out how to beg, borrow, steal talent, you have figured out a way to build your own talent in-house. And this is absolutely brilliant. And good afternoon, respected Mantriji, Sanjay Dhotriji. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I know how much you, as well as Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, care about the technology industry, what's going on. And it's wonderful to see you encouraging these youngsters. It's just so very special. Abhishek, you did a fantastic job talking about how OYO is using AI and analytics. I was fascinated to see how much the usage of technology in the hospitality sector that OYO is in is evolving. And today, honestly, while you were presenting, I was debating in my mind whether to call OYO a hospitality industry, company or a technology company. I think every company today is digital. And we truly are in the era of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. As it sort of disrupts every single industry sector out there. But the power of artificial intelligence to solve what we call large scale problems, perhaps met with no greater challenge than COVID-19. To me, COVID-19 was the stress test for technologies like artificial intelligence. Around the world, we've heard how medical experts have been leveraging technology, especially artificial intelligence and analytics, to drastically reduce the time to find and develop new vaccines to treat the pandemic. And to me, that's the biggest problem we have ahead of mankind or humankind to solve today. We need a vaccine that will keep us safe going forward. It was very interesting to read about these efforts and how so many medical experts felt that the biggest challenge in finding and developing the vaccine was trying to understand the billions of different molecules, data around the molecules, and how they might be used to do the chemical binding that was needed to target the COVID protein in order to get the right vaccine out there. I mean, given the amount of data that the scientists had to play with, if humans tried doing it, it would take forever. We would definitely not have a vaccine ready in our lifetime. But with the help of artificial intelligence, with the help of data analytics, it didn't take forever. By November, 2 vaccines in US with greater 95% efficacy were already announced. By now, the vaccination program has started in several countries like US and UK, and we're really hoping that it will start in India soon. I mean, to me, this is where technology hits the rubber. I mean, this is the ultimate stress test for technology, and has it delivered? There's a lot of talk about how artificial intelligence is, the most disruptive tool that was going to be made available to humankind. In fact, a lot of people say that it is so monumental that it's the awakening of AI is going to be the next great human revolution. And AI has the power to open doors that will allow us to solve several problems like climate change, water scarcity, vaccination, that we've never been able to solve before. And I think this is why there is so much excitement about technologies like AI. Now, when you talk about AI, we've all heard that data is what drives AI. Data is what feeds AI. Data is the oil, etc., etc. I'm sure you all have heard, at least in your, you all would have gone through at least 5 or 6 different presentations in your life in just this last year where you heard about the virtues of data. And I'm pretty amazed to see how we as a country feel very proud and very thrilled that we are such a data-rich country. And we therefore believe because we are data rich, because we generate so much data, we have a tremendous advantage in the race for artificial intelligence leadership. But I actually don't believe in that sentiment, and I do not agree with it. I believe that what enables us unlock the full potential of technologies like artificial intelligence is not data, but our ability to convert the data into insights, to knowledge. And the country that has the talent, or the company that has the talent to do that, is the country or company that will emerge a winner in this era of data or era of artificial intelligence. We have to stop obsessing about being data rich, and we have to start obsessing about being data intelligent. AI has the potential just in India to unlock 500 billion or to add 500 billion USD to our GDP by 2025. But only if we are able to unleash the power of analytics and insights. To me, that's key. To me, that's what it takes to unlock the full potential of AI. And it's being recognized more and more. The demand of good data analytics and analysts is going through the roof. I mean, if you look at, NASSCOM recently concluded a study with Zinnov, where we looked at the digital talent demand in the country, in India, and how is it growing. And we found that demand for data scientists, data analysts, cloud computing experts, cybersecurity experts, these were 8 times higher than what the supply is today. And by 2024, we expect it to be 20 times higher than supply. And this is not just being driven by the IT industry. This is being driven by automotive. This is being driven by healthcare, banking, finance, companies like yours. That's where the need is growing. And, we did another, I was looking at another survey that Deloitte had done actually to show that even in this kind of a pandemic, companies are not just paying increments for tech-related roles, but companies are willing to pay a premium for roles like data analysts, data scientists, etc. I mean, the premium was in the range of 20 to 22%. I mean, this is obviously the future. And I think those of you who had the foresight to apply for this course, and those of you who were lucky enough to get into this course, congratulations. Huge congratulations, because I think, few years from now, you will look back at this as one of the best career decisions that you took. This is what hopefully is going to change the trajectory of your career, and hopefully for the better. As you get all ready to come out of this course and get back to your job, I would just request you to keep 3 things in mind, which I think are going to be extremely important for you to build your own competitive advantage in the future. One, we're living in the era of bilinguals. It's not enough to be good in technology. You have to be a great storyteller too. You have to be great in communication. In fact, there was, I think it was MIT that recently did a survey to see what is that one skill that all data analysts must have or data scientists must have. What is the premium skill for data analysts and scientists? And it was nothing to do with technology. It was storytelling. Because as data analysts and data scientists, your ability to tell the story, to talk about what the insights are showing you is what will make that insight valuable. And that is what is going to build your own competitive advantage in your professional career. So do not ignore that part of it. As I said, we are in the age of bilinguals where you need technology to come together with very strong professional skills like communication, creativity, etc. The second thing Rohit already touched on, learning never stops. There is no end goal. Whatever you have learned in the last few months is going to set the foundation for more learning to take place. The biggest thing that I've seen IT industry look out for when they go to campus to hire is not how much you know, but how quickly can you unlearn and how quickly can you learn. I mean, technology is changing so fast. In order for us to keep up with it, we have to continuously learn. So I always say this to anyone who's graduating from any course, that this is the beginning. This is not the end of learning, and make learning your best friend if you want to stay relevant in your career. And last but not the least, trust is the biggest currency of the hyper-digital world, especially for those of you who are working with data and with insights. It is tremendously important for you to ensure that you act with the highest degree of responsibility and ethics, because if you lose trust once in this digital world, you lose everything. I mean, consumers will not take a second look at you once the trust is broken. And trust, when broken, is extremely difficult to build back. So, trust is critical. And I think, especially the people who are at the front end of working with data, plays a critical role in ensuring that companies like Oyo, like any company out there, is able to build trust. So once again, a huge thanks to the Oyo team for giving me this opportunity. Congratulations to each and every one of you. I wish you the very best for a very high impactful future. Be bold, be courageous, and most of all, be your best. You guys have chosen a fantastic field to specialize in, to get more trained in. This is one of the most in demand for skills out there. So make the most of it. Congratulations and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Debjani, for joining us. I'm sure a lot of us are inspired, and more of us from different teams want to now follow this. We understand that you have to leave for your board meeting, and we are grateful that you could be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, Neeta. Sorry, I have to leave, but lovely to see you. Sanjay ji, thank you very much. Rohit, Amo, thanks.
It is my privilege to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General of the National Informatics Center, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. With a career spanning over 3.5 decades, Dr. Verma has been instrumental in implementing high-impact digital initiatives across our country. In her current role as Director General, she is spearheading the development of digital platforms for various initiatives of the government under the Digital India program. She was instrumental in setting up the technology platform for MyGov and was featured among the top 55 inspiring women around the world who have showcased the power of technology in the government sector. She holds a PhD from IIT Delhi and has also co-authored books on the importance of technology in governance. Welcome, Dr. Verma.
Thank you everyone. Namaskar, sir. All senior officers from Oyo and dear students, it's indeed my pleasure to be talking to you on the topic of data and data science, which is so close to my heart. And I think this is the best time to talk on these things. After we had this launch of Digital India program in 2015 at a historic event by Honorable Prime Minister, we have really seen a lot of acceleration in the digital transformation initiatives of the government as well as of the industry. And that has really kind of brought a lot of new things. One, in any case, we have seen this whole revolution of broadband, which has made provided affordable access to people in the different corner of this country, to people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, and that has really changed the kind of applications and services we've started offering to our citizens, whether it is sharing of content, sharing of information. If I talk of government, in fact, since this Digital India program, and since at that time the cloud also kind of government had its own cloud, so a lot of major programs of the government, be it Swachh Bharat Mission, I'm sure in one way or other, all of you must have heard of it, constructing toilets, providing toilets to every family, housing for all, employment to all, to everybody across the country, employment guarantee scheme, and NREGA, which we call ration distribution from depot to the end consumer of those ration shops, distribution of fertilizers, right from its planning of fertilizers to the last point delivery to the farmer, distribution of seeds, scholarships, pension disbursement, various kinds of pensions government gives, taxes you've seen, GST, income tax. Many of these systems, all of these systems are digital end-to-end. In fact, some of these systems are born digital. Means they were conceptualized using digital platforms, the gap analysis, the planning, the scoping, complete implementation, and the monitoring is everything done on a digital platform. With these kind of national level programs available, being going end to end, and it has really generated a huge amount of data. Data is getting generated almost in real time from various data points, from village level, some information is coming from block level, and the data is very rich. It has lifelong data, it has local photographs data, and it has all kinds of contacts and things. And this and over and above, now you have this beautiful things like Internet of Things, various sensors, various embedded electronics, and then the drones which are now coming. Through this, again, a huge amount, and then you have this traffic sensors, CC cameras on the roads. Huge amount of data is being generated in real time. And this data is being used currently by the government, but mostly for the specified purpose. But this data has a huge untapped potential. This can be used for personalization of services to individuals related to their past transactions. It can generate a lot of insight to assess implementation of national programs and take resilience to improve. Earlier, if it's a 5-year program, only after 5 years of the program, impact assessment will be done, and then some will and the study will come. This works well, this does not work well, and then we can include these learning from this only in your next program. But if you have these kind of national digital platforms, which is again coupled with data analytics and data science models and the algorithms, while the program is on, you can continuously get to know how it is programming, how it is doing in different, because when government's program it is running in 740 districts at one place. It is running 1,000 plus blocks at one time. So you're getting data points from all these places. And you can really get to know what is one where is working, where is not working. And it gives you an ability to take mid-course corrections or mid-course changes to the scheme, so that you do not have to really wait for 5 years to see what is an outcome. So it brings a lot of agility in the governance once you have these kinds of models and ability available. Maybe even not these data points, but perhaps earlier also. But as you know, all of those data science and data analytics need a lot of compute power, which was perhaps also not readily available individually. Now with this advent of cloud computing and this data analytics and big data has also really caught up, has really become much more democratized and much more easy and affordable for to do. This data which is getting generated can also be used for policy making. We can use this data through good data analytics model to determine what should be the tax rate, what kind of savings should be there, how the allocation of the budget should happen to various programs and series. Because schemes and programs are work for years. So depending on their past performance and their past expenditure, could we do these kind of models? And to really promote this kind of data-driven analysis and data-driven decision making, we had set up a center of excellence at NIC Center for Data Analytics, CW short we call it fondly. And the whole objective of this data is to promote this culture of data analytics. We definitely initially begin with this concept of dashboard, which is more presentation kind of analysis. But slowly we are kind of moving them into an era where not only they use these dashboards to get the status, but they can use this dashboard to do exploratory analysis, to do a lot of diagnostic kind of analysis that what is happening, why is this happening this way, and then going forward to prescriptive analysis, saying that what can be done to get desired outcome on things like this. And so the overall mandate of the center is, or as NIC, it is again the primary domain for us to basically transform government to more of a data-driven governance than taking decisions based on perceptions and then past experience. Because we feel that can make a lot of change and can have much better impact and outcome from our initiatives if it is really supported by the data and the sound analysis done. Let me give you an example. And in analytics, Let me give you an example of how analytics can also be used for even you often hear a kind of failure or so to say leakage happening in the system as things are being distributed, whether it is one distributed or drain distributed. How can you really use data analytics to make sure the right benefit reaches the right beneficiary at the right time? So we have this program like National Scholarship Portal. This is a single portal where scholarships offered by all ministries in the government of India are being offered to the students from class 1 to higher education. Single form they have to fill and basis that form depending on the details they have given which schemes are applicable to them and from these schemes which one is where they are everywhere you will have a large number of applicants but less number of scholarships available. So which is the one where probability of getting is higher, those kind of recommendations are content. Now we have a year students are applying for the villages and the schools where always likely that somebody is applying somebody kind of I think those kind of malpractices may have happened. So how do you over this program we are running for now about I think the third year, fourth year of this portal running fourth calendar year. And over 1.5 crore students apply for scholarships and scholarships as small as saying 100 to 500 rupees goes to lakhs of rupees to students in high engineering colleges and they're doing their graduation. So there's a lot of money involved in this whole process. So we have to make sure that there is no kind of a malpractice or any kind of effort to use the system should not happen. Making sure the right student gets. We have brought this whole discipline of fraud analytics. We front call it fraud analytics and where we have built various kinds of checks and balances, various kinds of models and algorithms through which we continuously on almost a real-time basis, we are kind of processing this data, analyzing this data, and trying to identify any kind of anomaly happening in transactions, any kind of suspicious applications which we find out basis, whatever is the learning over this thing, and then there is a kind of respective state runs or district administration to sort all those things out. It has false positives. I'm not saying this was wrong. But a lot of these kind of things become detrimental for the applicant when they find this kind of analysis is going on at the web. And this is kind of analytics where we are giving scholarship, we intend to put in all our systems where some kind of benefit of finances are going on. Because we have national platforms and running the people from every village line you also need to have. So you have a huge. So why have data analytics of policy making or doing environmental protection or certain being kind of parameters? This is another important thing which concern of government is also one hand. During COVID time, you all must have seen the kind of analysis we are done, and I happy that lot of people have seen very closely the potential of data analytics for potential of data science. The idea was also mentioning in terms of development of science, which has been going on for quite a few years. But even management and connectivity, which you are very closely associated with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Home Affairs, ICMR, data governments, and then district administration. Management of pandemic associated lockdown, supply of essential things, and how we really go. There is a lot of data analytics being deployed on all those things that NIC had putting a national COVID data hub, where all kinds of data related to COVID, whether it is lab results, whether it is contact tracing results, whether it is results about the COVID positive patients across the country, otherwise representing movement of people, so that not only we can make sure that people get adequate medical help. Medical help in the our need. We also constantly inform and advise them on taking necessary precautions And over and above, how do we make sure that how many hospitals, a lot of analysis was done, that how many hospitals, how many oxygen cylinders, how many ventilators will require as the problem. Since this requirement was varying from state to state, from city to city. So there was a whole lot of analytics being done almost on a daily basis, and this is the sort of decisions being taken. You have seen during that lockdown, many new COVID hospitals came, and existing hospitals were converted. One thing in this whole process has happened, that appreciation for data analytics, appreciation for data-driven decision making has really gone very high. People have started understanding the power of data, and which I was personally very pleased to see that kind of thing. And there's been a lot more demand for these things in their daily governance activities, whichever they are kind of doing. Like for example, you have this criminal justice system, where the data of all the police stations, all the IIs, and all the prisoners, and then all the court cases is being kind of correlated into one system. Now, for this system, if you really put various kind of analytics around it and kind of AI, you could always find out that supposing the criminal who is a hardcore criminal already there are 10 cases, if you leave this person on bail, what is the kind of crime he's going to do? Who are his associates? What is his criminal network? And how do you really put checks and balances, make sure that these kind of crimes not happen? So all I'm trying to say is government has a whole lot of data, and there is a whole lot of scope of doing a variety of analytics. And so I know this program you have particularly done for your own professionals, but I'm sure sometime you'll open it to others also, because there is a huge scarcity of this profession, all this and this particular profession across all means, not only in government but otherwise also. So it's a very welcome move that and that you opened up this kind of a thing, and now moving forward to AI, because this data, while it's very good for doing decision making, planning, this can also be used for and can really become a critical asset for AI. Many of you must have seen, we've been hearing of AI. I remember 30 years ago, even when I was in college, we were taught a paper on AI and were told something is happening in Japan somewhere, and that's all we understood at that time. But today, this AI has become mainstream. It has already started touching our lives. I mean, we don't even realize, but you must be really feeling the essence. In terms of language conversations, we have language assistants all in our phones. In terms of recommendation systems, there is a lot of AI going in our day-to-day lives, which we don't even often realize. This AI to happen, for a solid AI to happen, you really need a lot of data, because this data will only help in performing machine learning, in performing models or deploying models of deep learning. Because as we know, if data is not good, it can create a negative bias or other kind of a bias into the system, and which could make model take not so right decisions. So data and a good quality data is very important. And I personally feel that we as of today are in very exciting times, because we are at the cusp of now adoption of these new technologies, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, blockchain, quantum computing in our day-to-day lives. And these technologies, believe me, will have a profound impact in the way we kind of deal in our personal lives, in our professional lives, as well as in our social lives. You're going to see a whole lot of lot of is happening which we are not even realizing, which is underneath, but you're going to see more and more application of these technologies, and you will see absolutely new genre of applications, mobile apps and all coming, never seen before, probably because these all technologies were so far in the lab. Now they have all become mainstream. Let me give you some example from government perspective that how these technologies can have a huge potential to address challenges in India's growth, be it doubling our farmers' income, providing affordable quality healthcare to all, or education to all with better learning outcomes. Let me give you some examples. First, we are a country with 22 languages. And one of our major challenges, whether we talk of education, healthcare, or anything, is that how do you really provide an effective communication in all these 22 languages? Then there is a challenge of literacy in our country. And we have already seen very powerful natural language processing engines, text to speech engines, speech to text engines, but they are all working very well in English language. Some could be in Hindi, but there is a need for us to have equally high quality engines in all these domains in all 22 languages, so that the people who are bottom of the pyramid can also be brought into the mainstream. They could access information, they could avail services as anyone who's English speaking. And if we could succeed in this, believe me, we'll be able to take India from that digital divide, which we have started feeling a bit, to the digital inclusion or digital empowerment, which has been the fundamental philosophy behind the Digital India program when it was conceived and it was given by the Honorable Prime Minister. If you see agriculture, now in agriculture, the best part is a lot of digitization has already happened. You have database of land records all across the country. You have database of soil health of all these land parcels. You have information about the seeds varieties and seed distributions is there. Fertilizer supply chain is already automated. Agriculture marketplace is already in place. Lot of procurement and research there. Over and above, we also have this very vibrant startup community in the country who have developed beautiful AI-driven, data analytics-driven model, which can help you in recommending you basis your land, soil, and putting some sensors into your soil, that what kind of crop should you grow, what is the right time for irrigation, what is the right time for sowing the seeds, and what is the right time of harvesting these seeds. Where is that you can get the best price? All these things are available in bits and pieces. But what we need to do is, but the farmers, it is very difficult to access. It's not that simple for them to access today. How do you connect in all these systems and provide a customized information, focus information to the farmer, into the language, into the mode which he or she understands? He doesn't, you can't expect him to feed this 25 things. Normally, when you build a model, you need to put all these parameters and then the model will give you some recommendation. But all these things have to happen at the back end. And finally, some kind of a mobile or some such manifestation has to come through which this delivery will happen, where recommendation for each farmer will be personalized depending on all various parameters, coupled with what is the order of investment he will like to make. So, but this is still, we have not reached there. But all I am saying is today, the basic ingredients for all this is already there. All we need to do is connect them with data analytics, with data modeling, data science, and AI put together. Put together, and we can build beautiful services for our farmers, which will really help them. Similarly, if you go to healthcare, and we have witnessed during this time that we really need to put much more of investment in our healthcare to really provide quality healthcare in an affordable means to all. And though the Ayushman Bharat program of the government, affordability to a great extent has been achieved, but still for many, but the access still continues to be the problem. Now, access, one thing with good thing in COVID has happened that government has released guidelines for telemedicine, and and lot of telemedicine platforms have come up over this time. As a result, access to a great extent has been addressed with this. Broadband revolution has further added. Now, the major problem which is there is a scarcity of healthcare professionals. If you know the number of doctors we have, is it looks like where will we reach? And producing a doctor needs 5 to 8 years, one doctor to produce. So the only possible solution in the short term to address is use of technology, use of data, and use of AI. you have these doctors on primary. Why I always say quality healthcare. I particularly say because if you have primary health centers where you have these doctors who are graduated some long time ago, so over the time they were kind of general doctors who have not really specialized into one. Whereas the complexity of diseases, the new kind of diseases with our new lifestyles have really become many fold. So how do you help these doctors who are sitting in this primary health center? Can you build AI driven diagnostic? We are looking at X-ray results, looking at various scans, looking at the input of ECG, which because of the telecom revolution and broadband revolution is very much possible for me to put in. So if I could put these engines, wherein looking at this scan, this engine, AI engine can help this doctor that this patient is likely to have, let's say, grade 2 cancer. And now this he should be immediately referred to some cancer hospital, looking at the scan. Or even during the COVID, at the early stage, looking at my lung X-ray can be found out I am likely to have COVID. It is not giving the final decision. It is telling me the probability of this having. And we have seen worldwide, and even some good startups in India have also done, a good engines have been built, AI engine. And these AI engines can further become better if we provide them more and more data, because data is one which really, refines these engines as we go. With this whole this beautiful thing of deep learning has come, it kind of makes machine learn itself by using this data. With this put in, if you could do this AI driven diagnostic and help this primary health centers, they can not only save many lives, they can also save those poor people whose financial condition goes down because of the investment they have to do. Somebody in the family has become cancer patient or any kind of other chronic disease it has got, and they suffer only because they could not get that diagnosis at the right time. So that's another domain, I feel this AI and data science will have a huge potential. And last, which is why I'm telling you is a very low hanging fruit and can be achieved, is this proactive delivery of government services. So far, when you have government services, you have to apply for these services and then you are being delivered. But my point is, lot of things are known. I mean, there are regulations. I have to give a driving license. I have to apply for this. I have to get benefits out of these schemes. Can we work out, depending on my data, if you already have, I have already registered my birth details with you. I always register with you when I go to school, when I graduate, all details are there with them. Can we put all this data and do some kind of analytics and modeling behind it, through which we could recommend or we could suggest or inform the citizens that these are the benefits you could avail from government? Because see, one of the divide which comes is the lack of information. Why is children who are studying in public schools or who are into so to say into metros get better prospects for their higher education, better job prospects? Is there access to information that what are the various possible avenues for them? Which children in these rural areas or who do not have in the family people who are so educated or are kind of vulvous can tend to be at the on the losing side? And but if you could provide this information to everybody, this proactive information to everybody, maybe we could empower many more people and guide them into right. So this proactive delivery of citizen, whether it is basic service of delivering a ration or a birth certificate or a caste certificate, or going forward to reminding me when is my property tax due, when is my income tax due, or when is my other kind of, if I'm business, GST and all those things are due. So this proactiveness needs my past data put and clubbing it with the various terms of the various government regulations, and then offering services to the citizens at the end. And if we focus our last mile or our those bottom of the pyramid citizens to begin with, we can perhaps bring many of them above the poverty line. There are many more examples, but in the interest of time, let me just stop here. I would only like to emphasize the point that the data analytics, data science, and AI have a huge potential for next-gen applications. And these next-gen applications are not going to be limited IT applications. These applications are going to be all across us in our lives. They will touch base with us in many ways. And therefore, I think you all youngsters who have chosen this to specialize in the data science domain, I like to compliment all of you. And you if you're, as Debjani was saying, if you are a data science specialist, and you have a domain knowledge, this puts you into a higher pedestal from those young graduates who are coming with just data science knowledge, because you can really do far better application of these models and algorithms, because you understand the domain, you understand the nuances of the domain and the requirements of the domain. And I wish you all the very best in your future career. I am sure you have an exciting career, and I thank OYO for inviting me here. Take care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Verma, for sharing such valuable, intricate insights with all of us. I'm sure all of us present here have learned a lot from you. Thank you once again. On behalf of our entire organization and everyone present here today, it is my great honor to welcome our chief guest, Shri Sanjay Dhotri ji, Honorable Minister of State for Education, Electronics, IT and Communications, Government of India. He will now deliver the keynote address, but first a few lines to introduce him. An engineer by training, a practicing agriculturist and industrialist, Shri Sanjay Dhotri ji has remained active in social and political life for the last 4 decades. He is one of the few members who has been re-elected for 4 terms in the Lok Sabha. Shri Dhotri ji has been a public representative, making his mark at all important positions held in fields ranging from academics to agriculture to new age technology. He was the former vice chairman of Maharashtra Council of Agriculture, Education and Research, Pune, and has been awarded for his outstanding contributions by the Maharashtra government. Sir, would request you to kindly take over and deliver the keynote address.
Thank you for these kind words. Namaste to all. Mr. Rohit Kapoorji, CEO, OYO and South Asia, OYO India and South Asia. Mrs. Debjani Ghosh, President NASSCOM. Shri MP Mal, Chairman, IRCTC. Dr. Nita Verma, DG NIC. Mr. Abhishek Bansal, Miss Prasiddha Menon, Gitika Hans, Karan Siddharth Dasgupta, Nilay Badavne, and other senior functionaries of OYO, facilitators and coaches of the OYO Data Science Academy, other distinguished guests, participants, and dear graduating students. It gives me immense pleasure to be among the giants of the data science and AI and all stalwarts of new technologies OYO, which started as a startup just 6 to 7 years back, has become a leading chain of hotels and homes thanks to the use of technology, especially data science. The marriage of hospitality industry with new technologies on such a bigger scale is really noteworthy. It has rolled out tech-enabled improvements across several areas right from its product, OTA operations, refund systems, research on partner and customer decisions, dashboards, and many others. OYO is marching strongly in the hospitality sector using data science, reaping benefits of interconnected globalized world. Friends, nobody would have imagined the globalization of a pandemic in 2020, altering and setting the global economics and business ecosystem. But change situations call for intelligent responses. And I believe that upskilling our workforce to equip them to meet the impending challenges, converting them into opportunities, is one such response. I therefore congratulate OYO Data Science Academy for thinking about these courses and starting it. I also congratulate the graduating students and extend my best wishes to them. Friends, COVID-19 has taught us that situation can change and can change very fast. Technologies can change, working environment and market conditions can change, working models can change. But what remains constant is requirement of being nimble-footed, adapting quickly to change circumstances, skilling, reskilling, upskilling of our talented workforce is very much essential. It is for the benefit of the worker, no doubt, but it is more beneficial for the organizations to have a skilled and updated workforce at all the times. Friends, who else will understand the importance of data than all of us who have assembled here today? The massive amount of data that is being generated per day, last 20 years have especially seen the tremendous growth of use of data commercially, authentic, reliable data with lower latency to do many wonders. And our young startup entrepreneurs and innovators have understood that. OYO is a bright, shining example of excellent use of data and related technology. The flow of data has remained unaffected even during COVID-related lockdowns. Even when the situations or working conditions change, data will continue to flow, albeit it changed context and with changed parameters. And we must have the tools and equipments and skill to use this data to our benefit. According to its mission statement, I believe that OYO Data Science Academy will definitely keep the skill sets of your workforce highly skilled, competitive and relevant in the changed circumstances to build world-class data talent and offer enriching career development opportunities to the OYO workforce. Friends, the industry 4.0 has already arrived. New technologies like robotics, drones, data analytics, Internet of Things, deep learning, artificial intelligence, and many others have proved their utility. These technologies have strong disruptive characteristics. Sometimes the performance is so massive and exponential that it goes beyond the capacity of traditional graphs and forecast. Our march in the world of tech startup is testimony to this. A number of startup unicorns are growing day by day and year after year, and they are the flag bearers of our Startup India led Atmanirbhar Bharat. This sustained march is a result of the Digital India mission of our Prime Minister Adarniya Shri Narendra Modi ji, which was started in year 2015. It was not just a slogan. Digital India is not for the sake of going digital, but it is for achieving a governance system that is simplified, accessible, affordable, equitable, inclusive, and where a common man can connect easily with the technology. The famous trinity of Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobiles is now part of illustrious digital history. Aadhaar, DigiLocker, UPI are unique products used by common Indians, highlighting that when you work for India, you get the scale. The eKYC has become the norm, and India has started its journey towards less cash economy. Mobile payments, digital payments increased exponentially, but for this, we require digitally literate users. Friends, so far more than 3 crore people have been trained through programs like PMG Disha. More than 3 lakhs of common service centers have been established throughout the length and breadth of the country to enable the digitally challenged get the benefit of government services and other services like telemedicine, tele-education, the Aadhaar-enabled payment system, which is bank agnostic, ensure doorstep delivery of cash from any bank account even during the lockdown. The direct benefit transfer ensure transfer of subsidies, cash from government directly to the account of beneficiary, thus removing the middleman and the corruption. The DBT digital infrastructure that was created by spending about rupees 10,000 crores has so far helped in saving more than rupees 1,70,000 crores of taxpayers' money, and it's further increasing every year. Friends, at every step, massive amount of digital footprints were generated. Humongous data was created. This data and its analytics further help the companies to understand the customer behavior, buying pattern. It helps the government to plug the leakages, weed out the malpractices, and reach out directly to the common man. This is helping government not only effectively delivering its services at the doorstep, but also ventures into the realm of predictive governance. Friends, this was not possible without strong telecommunication and mobile ecosystem. Almost simultaneously, the telecom revolution also picked up in India. Dr. Nita Verma just spoke about this. The mere 6.5 lakh base transit stations or BTS in 2014 rose about 220% to reach to 22 lakh in just over 5 years. The mobile connections rose from 910 million in 2014 to 1156 million in 2020. Millions of smartphones came in the hands of Indians. Internet connections grew by more than 150% and broadband connections grew 10 times from 65 million in 2014 to 673 million in January 2020. India achieved unique distinction of having one of the cheapest data rates and one of the highest per capita data consumption. To take the digital revolution straight into rural heartland, the BharatNet project was envisaged to connect about 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats with broadband connectivity. In the next less than 1,000 days, about 6 lakh villages will be connected with optical fiber. The undersea OFC has already reached the remote islands of Andaman and Nicobar, and process for Lakshadweep has also started. The PM Wani project of public Wi-Fi has been approved by Prime Minister-led cabinet, and millions of public Wi-Fi hotspots will now proliferate. The National Digital Communication Policy 2018 was brought in to further strengthen India's telecommunication muscles, and so does the National Broadband Mission 2019 to ensure broadband access to all villages by 2022. Sorry. The point I want to drive here is that under the leadership of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, we have created a massive digital infrastructure to make India ready to take lead in data-related economy and AI revolutions. The data you are using was created by enabling millions of citizens to generate that data. We enabled our companies, our citizens to create tons of data, made these data consumptions cheap, which fueled more consumption and generated even more data. The field of hospitality, fintech, education, entertainment, health, retail, telecom are all benefited by this data evolution. But friends, this journey also has its share of challenges too. And with the stalwarts of IT industry, technology sector and data sciences present here, I would like to flag some of those concerns here. Limited availability of sufficiently skilled and updated manpower is one big challenge which the stakeholders must look into. There is a huge void of content creation in local languages. This lack of content translation can be accepted as a challenge to overcome through AI or machine learning. It is also seen that there is a gap or poor connect between the domain experts, say as in the field of health, agriculture, education, banking, etc., and the technical expert in the field of say data analytics, AI, etc. So many times the desired outcome is not achieved as domain knowledge experts and AI technology experts work in silos. The gap must be bridged. Our challenges like lack of clean, unfragmented data, lesser innovations in technologies related to collecting as well as analyzing the data must also be overcome. There should be availability of platforms where academia, startups, industry can discuss and share with each other the knowledge as well as the requirements and exceptions. And mentoring, handholding of new entrants must be encouraged. Friends, technology has its advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, India wants responsible AI which is sustainable, inclusive, and that will have positive impact on citizens, industries, and society. The technology, if only limited to getting awards and generating academic buzz, will be of no use for aspirational country like India. Hence, our endeavor should be to bring the elite technologies to realm of common man and his life. The technologies must provide affordable, accessible, equitable answer to his problems. Will there be any use of technology to a farmer if it doubles its productivity but halves his profits? Will any technology be helpful if it is beneficial in short term but not sustainable in the long term? Will this technology be cost effective? These and many such questions we as a leading light in technology field must try to answer. And I am sure the experts present are already working in this direction. Friends, before concluding, I once again thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my views. OYO Data Science Academy aspires to build a world-class data science and advanced analytics team to offer improved customer and partner experiences. I am sure that the graduating students have received the necessary skill to compete in the global tech arena and create the world beating products using data and data sciences. I wish all the best. Thank you once again and best wishes to all of you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We are grateful for your presence and inspired by your kind words, and we ensure that we will continue our work with full commitment.